Before we get started, this video was a long-awaited request from many of the Subscribestar bros. Since summer is slowly coming to an end, might as well cap things off with a trip south of the border. Yep, it's time to give the Mexican bros some love, by talking about how nightmarish it must be to live in Mexico. It's gonna be great. Also, YouTube still hasn't remonetized me after a false community guideline strike, so use code TAL at checkout. I'm gonna have to show at the beginning and end of videos now. It'd be how it be on these streets.
During the production of this video, Loli was once again monetized by YouTube. He actually ran into the one human being who runs the moderation support and was able to explain to them the situation. So all is good in the kingdom once again.
But regardless, let's get to the review.
Keep looking at me for? No armless in glass, remember?
Sicario. Yeah, this movie does not need an introduction. This is probably one of the most well-known thrillers from the last several years, coming out in 2015 and directed by Denis Villeneuve, however you say his name, and written by Taylor Sheridan, starring Emily Blunt, Josh Brolin, and Benicio del Toro. Sicario is the story of an FBI agent who finds herself way over her head after getting involved in a shady operation to tackle cartel activity in Mexico, which quickly shows that it might be more unethical and downright horrifying than she ever expected. So to get it right out of the way, I love Sicario. This is easily one of my favorite films, and the reputation it's earned over the years is well deserved. It's something I've seen probably dozens of times ever since it came out. Hell, I've used pieces of the soundtrack in the Berserk Saga video, so you get it. This is a widely acclaimed film. But what exactly is Sicario? Well, let's take a step back and explain some things. You see, Sicario is actually part of a trilogy, the Neo-Western trilogy by Taylor Sheridan. Films that try to take Old West film mindsets and transplant them into the modern day. And the three are Hell or High Water, Wind River, and Sicario. Though Sicario is actually the first one. All three are excellent, each taking different pieces of the Old West mythology and remixing elements to fit in a new setting, all while still keeping the soul and authenticity that makes them feel decidedly Western. Hell or High Water is a story about bank robbers, essentially a duo of outlaws trying to stay 2 steps ahead of a dedicated sheriff chasing them. A well-worn story for Westerns, though it's changed to include details such as needing to launder the money, and the sheriff is actually a Texas Ranger, acknowledging the passage of time and showing how the modern world has changed this historically classic crime to something much more complicated.
Lord of the Plains. That's me.
Wind River is a murder mystery about a woman who ends up dead on a Native American reservation, delving into how life on a reservation looks like in the modern era, the drugs, poverty, harsh conditions some people have to live with, and Jeremy Renner essentially playing the classic cowboy figure who comes in to save the day, a mixture of fantasy and reality that grounds the trilogy across all 3 films.
I'm a hunter, Martin. What do you think I'm doing?
Sicario is kind of the black sheep. It's hard to point out the actual Western elements at first glance, though it's still considered part of the trilogy. It's something that is apparent after some digging, but it can be a tad complicated to explain. Before getting into that, let's give some setup. Sicario follows FBI agent Kate Macer. She works in Arizona and is on operation one day to raid a house suspected of containing hostages. Except they find that it's a cartel stronghold with no living people left to save. They also unintentionally set off a bomb planted on the property that kills several agents. This is a clear escalation of cartel violence that results in a specialist to be called in by the Department of Defense, Matt Graver. He recruits Kate into an operation that claims to be about hunting down the leader of the Sonora cartel, but she quickly realizes that what she got herself into is a lot deeper. Hopefully you already see what I'm talking about with Sicario being the black sheep of the Neo-Western trilogy. It's very clearly doing its own thing and sort of took on a life of its own after it released. A lot of people don't even realize that it is part of a trilogy, and it's the only film of it to receive a sequel, Day of the Soldado. So Sicario ended up becoming the face of Taylor Sheridan's Neo-Western series, while having the least to do with it, which is kind of funny when you think about it. And to talk about the actual film itself, it is excellent on a technical level. Denis Villeneuve has a very distinct style to his films, highly clinical and almost David Fincher levels of precision. He knows what he wants to see, and he's able to organize sequences with a lot of different moving parts that end up working out flawlessly. He also has a good sense of making his films feel empty. There's almost inhuman silence that persists even if people are talking. They can feel downright draining to watch, and there's always a building tension, even if the characters themselves are letting their guards down. I really like Denis' films. So far, he's been able to consistently make high-quality stuff. Enemy is a psychological puzzle that's able to take a simple concept, yet make it feel like it's part of this massive web. Arrival is a very creative take on the aliens come to Earth premise that goes in directions you do not see coming. Prisoners is an awesome missing persons thriller with one of Hugh Jackman's best performances.
And every day, she's wondering why I'm not there to fucking rescue her.
Even his Blade Runner sequel ended up being downright phenomenal, able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the original and create a story that has went on to have a life of its own, much like the classic Blade Runner. The only real films I think are shaky are his Dune movies. And that's just kind of what happens when trying to break down a story as massive as Dune into just a trilogy of movies. That's a franchise that really needs to be more of like a mini-series or something like Game of Thrones than anything else. I mean, there's just too many factors that need to be addressed. He definitely gave it his best shot, and they're not bad, but it comes with the territory. Still, Sicario is probably my favorite of his movies. That or Blade Runner 2049. It just kind of depends on the day. He's definitely a director I recommend quite a lot, since he has something that somebody will enjoy, no matter their taste. And Sicario is probably his most normie-friendly movie. Even though it's a 2-hour-long movie, it actually is kind of pretty quick-paced, able to go from sequence to sequence fast enough that you still feel satisfied with the story while never getting bored. It's a movie that doesn't waste your time, and only really has a few cracks in the armor that keep it from being a perfect movie. Some unanswered questions and conveniences that can kind of stick in your brain, but I'd argue the film does more than enough to make up for it. Just some small wrinkles that can kind of make you scratch your head when you really think about them. Other than that, the movie's able to nail pretty much everything it sets out to do. It's a very haunting film that's able to feel uncomfortable and intense even during something as simple as a scene about a meeting. It's also a movie that intentionally doesn't answer a lot of questions. A large part of the story is that the protagonist is left in the dark, so things can happen in the background with Kate completely clueless as to what's happening. It's a movie that focuses on the here and now rather than worrying about the past. You'll learn about the backstories of characters like Kate or later Alejandro, but they're kept very brief and as essentially banter dialogue, because their history is only really there to set up their circumstances. What matters is what they do in the moment. Hell, certain characters are kept fully unexplained and left as just someone you see in a scene. And that mystery around them sells the point of who they are quickly. You're not supposed to know who this guy is, because technically he's not even supposed to be here. And here's where we had to put up a spoiler warning for Sicario. This movie is 10 years old, but we want to give people who haven't seen it a chance to sit down and give it a watch. Definitely do it. This movie's gonna stay in your mind for a long time. It's genuinely amazing.
Welcome to Juarez.
So yeah, Kate ends up stumbling into an operation set up by the Department of Defense and the fucking CIA. You see, the bomb incident caused the government to take the issue of cartel violence a tad more seriously, so they set up an operation to track down and eliminate the leader of the Sonora cartel, Fausto Alacron. Kate goes a long time in the film unaware of this, though she has her suspicions. She knows Matt is lying about who he is, but is never able to pull the full truth out of the guy. The reason the film just goes along without explaining anything is because that's the point. Kate is also just pulled along in the story, and everyone around her treats her like a useful idiot, while the men in the background did the real work. She's just there to stamp the papers. At every step, Kate is noticing more and more that shows this is not a law enforcement mission, it's a military operation. From crossing the border into Juarez, where the US military is not supposed to be, and especially not an FBI agent, or that they're able to pull men from Delta Force for an escort mission, and of course, Alejandro, a supposed advisor for DOD that works with Matt to take on the cartel, yet no one talks to him or even want to acknowledge that he's there. Kate is an FBI agent. Her world is about protocol, law and order, and courtrooms, and she's pulled into a situation that explicitly throws that out the window, to the point that you can kinda see Sicario as almost an Alice in Wonderland style story. Kate knew she wasn't getting much done just raiding houses, so she goes along with a mission that's a tad more chaotic, and she realizes exactly what chaos really means in this situation, doing things that are literal war crimes, all under the promise that she's helping to accomplish a greater good. A trip through Wonderland that starts with a Faustian bargain. Make that little deal with the devil that you think won't be that bad, and you end up realizing what's at stake by the end. Sicario intentionally leaves these details wide open, able to be spotted from a mile away if you know what to look for. Like, a guy shows up to a meeting at Homeland Security in plainclothes and flip-flops. Yeah, that dude's a tourist. Hell, as soon as Kate says yes to the deal, she's taken to a military airfield and flown down to Juarez. Not only that, but Matt knew more about the cartel operation than Kate, able to name figures that she didn't even know existed. They make it obvious that Matt is CIA, which is the point. The operation is obvious, even Kate's able to sniff it out pretty quickly.
He's a DOD advisor just like me.
No, he's not.
but she's won over by the promise of results, of being able to arrest these people and send them to prison. She's manipulated using her naivete and inexperience in dealing with literal spies. It's taking a cop and putting them in the middle of a war, because that's what the operation ends up being. America declares a quiet war on the cartel, all while pretending what's happening is within the book and totally legal. It's a film about the horrors that can occur in the war on drugs, showing the violence and downright evil at play with something as nasty as this. And yeah, America isn't exactly a virgin in this particular matter. Hell, look into how the DEA took down Pablo Escobar, essentially getting in bed with rival narcos and even death squads to corner him, all ending with blowing his head off on the rooftop of some Colombian slum house. A large point Sicario makes is that America is fully capable of fighting the drug war. Not just fight, but be this unstoppable wave that outclasses the cartels to a degree that is downright scary. The scene during the border crossing makes that apparent. Despite being in one of the most dangerous cities on the planet, Juarez, Mexico, the characters around Kate are unworried. They crack jokes, stay level-headed, and seem almost unimpressed. Jeffrey Donovan's character Steve even explains why cartels are so brutal to their victims.
They make people think they must have been involved, they must deserve such a death because they did something.
Laying out the mindset and showing that he himself is unaffected, showing more of a disturbing fascination with it than intimidation. Then you have the actual shootout at the border crossing. To explain more about the mission itself, the convoy is taking Guillermo, who is the brother to the overseer of the American operation of the Sonora Cartel, a man by the name of Manuel Diaz, to America for interrogation. Yet during so, they were able to spot tailors that were trying to track them down to the border crossing pretty much ever since the convoy started, and the tailors themselves don't even realize they've been spotted. Hell, they're even able to surround them and quickly pick them off in seconds once they actually try a confrontation. The power level of the American side is leagues beyond what the cartels have available, which is kind of the point. The whole time Kate was running in circles just reacting to the cartels growing more bold as they push into America, it's shown that the problem could easily be solved the whole time. It just takes a bit of unethical behavior and shady tactics. But that's a question the movie raises. If the solution was this easy, why wasn't it used before? And the story hangs on this for a while, biding its time to let you sink in and even accept what Matt is saying. You know he's shady and hiding something, but so far his way is working, so might as well follow and see what happens. You see them take the operation apart piece by piece, tracking down Manuel Diaz's brother, finding the tunnel the cartel uses to sneak product to America, even able to get the names of the cops working for the cartel that are on the Arizona police force. Yeah, that last one's kind of one of the wrinkles I mentioned before. It's a tad convenient Jon Bernthal's character was friends with Daniel Kaluuya's character and just so happened to be at that bar when him and Kate showed up. I mean, it's not impossible to handwave it as a coincidence being kind of the point. Maybe the cartel had Kate followed, maybe it was just a lucky coincidence, maybe they sent Jon Bernthal knowing he was friends with her friend. Hell, if you want, you can even see it as Kate being blind to just how dire the situation really is getting. She's now in the world of espionage and distrust, so anyone around her could be a threat in hiding. Still, it felt a tad ass-pully. Regardless, the situation with the cartel keeps escalating. Matt and Alejandro are able to take bigger bites and seem to be prepping for a big grand finale, something they're going out of their way to hide from Kate, dodging questions and outright lying more than once. The only given reason is to get Manuel Diaz called back to Mexico.
Gotta get Manuel called back to Mexico. That's the objective.
We have no jurisdiction in Mexico.
That detail confuses Kate because how could they arrest a man who has already left America and went to a foreign country? Even when they catch an associate of Manuel Diaz dead to rights laundering money, her bosses swear there's nothing that can be done, to just trust Matt and that what she's doing won't result in negative consequences, even hinting this has a way bigger scale than Kate has any comprehension of. This operation wasn't made by someone appointed to an office, but elected.
These decisions are made far from here, by officials elected to office, not appointed to them.
Still, Kate just wants some illusion of procedure, that feeling of real police work. But this isn't police work anymore, and Manuel Diaz going back to Mexico is just stage one of the plan. The reason they were looking for the tunnel, outright torturing the information on Guillermo and interrogating the illegal aliens caught trying to cross over into America, was because they're following Manuel. They need to know what route he would use to run back to his boss, the real target. This is where Alejandro comes into play. You see, throughout the film, Alejandro remains a very mysterious figure. You know bits and pieces about him. He was a former prosecutor that worked in Juarez, and now he's buddies with Matt, remaining as this sort of wild card that he uses for more deniable operations. Yeah, Alejandro's a hitman. The CIA's personal attack dog they send after anyone they need dead, and he has a very personal grudge against the Sonora cartel. Throughout the film, he has a weird fascination with Kate. While every other character treats her like a useful idiot or just some inconvenience, Alejandro is ironically more open and willing to talk to her. He still hides a lot, but it's clear that he has a sort of twisted respect for Kate. There's numerous comparisons between Sicario and Apocalypse Now, not just that the nature of both stories revolving around the idea of America viewing war crimes and horror as necessary tools to win wars that are long since turned to meat grinders, but also comparing Alejandro with Colonel Kurtz. Both are men who start off as idealists that are broken by their respective wars, becoming cruel and vicious towards their enemies, seeing it as the only tactic left for any hope at victory. While Kurtz is more outwardly insane, Alejandro feels more robotic, almost like he's lost so much of his humanity that he can't be insane anymore, just operating off ice-cold logic. He's willing to do anything to get this mission done. Literally anything. And the only thing that seems to give him a spark of humanity again is Kate. The Apocalypse Now comparison also applies to their bond as well. Alejandro seeing a sort of kindred spirit in her, almost like a younger version of himself, the idealist that believes in the process. Alejandro didn't start off as a hitman. Remember, he was a lawyer willing to work in one of the most violent cities in Mexico. There probably was a point in his life where he truly wanted to do the right thing, to tackle the cartels the right way and clean things up. But reality was far more cruel to him. His wife and daughter were murdered by the Sonora cartel, brutally. So his beef with the cartel and the leader of it, Fausto Alarcon, comes from a place of knowledge. He knows what they're capable of and understands the depths they're willing to go to protect their operation. So he simply decided that, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Also, it should be pointed out the Faustian bargain subtext is made pretty obvious since the cartel leader's name is Fausto. Yeah, it's not exactly subtle. Still, the truth of the operation is revealed in the final sequence, raiding the tunnel and hunting down Alarcon. The plan the whole time was to eliminate both Manuel and Fausto. Not arrest, but to kill. It's heavily implied they also kill Guillermo. Their idea is to cripple the Sonora cartel by targeting their money and killing the leadership, able to tear apart this intricate crime network in such a routine manner that it's genuinely scary. Now, so far you're probably thinking, well, what's so bad about this? They went after a violent cartel and got justice for the agents that were killed in the bombing. And you're not wrong. There is a dark temptation with Matt and his actions. That's the whole point of a Faustian bargain. It sounds tempting, this small price to pay for something so grand. Another point you can see with Apocalypse Now as well. Since Kurtz makes sense in a lot of ways, even if the man himself is a babbling madman. The point is to get you to realize how easy it can be to slip into behaviors that are truly evil, convincing yourself it's for a greater good or it's a necessary sacrifice. But in the end, all that's accomplished is a lot of dead bodies. Because the reality of the operation is made clear in the end. Alejandro is on board to get his revenge, which he gets in full, forcing Manuel to take him to his boss under threat of having his daughter kidnapped and raped. And executing each man that gets in his way, cornering Fausto and his family at dinner. This is a really famous scene of Alejandro face to face with a man who ruined his life. The tension is something that needs to be seen to be believed. It really is a scene that takes your breath away. You know full well Alejandro is going to kill Fausto. Even the characters are aware of what's going to happen. But how it ends is something you will not see coming. You see, Fausto has a history of killing his enemies. Not just that, but to turn each one into a message, displaying their bodies in public, willing to target law enforcement, and also killing their families. He acts as if the rules don't apply to him. Even when Alejandro confronts him, he tries to dodge responsibility by saying they simply learn from the Americans. But those words fall on deaf ears, because the point is that a line was crossed. He took it too far and got too public with his actions. He acted like he was bigger than he was. So Alejandro gives him exactly what he earned. He kills his entire family in front of him, his wife and 2 sons, giving Fausto just enough time for it to sink in before he too is killed. Alejandro's humanity is long since dead. The minute the mission started, he was going to do this. Hell, the entire reason he joined was because he wanted a chance at revenge. It's his main motivation for all of it, to punish the cartels like how they punished his family for his efforts to stop them as a lawyer. He fully accepted the bargain and gave up his soul, and he doesn't regret a thing, embracing this new world and even warning Kate to get out while she can, since she doesn't belong anywhere close to this. And Kate ends up stumbling into what the real point of the mission was that made it so horrifying. The point of killing Fausto and Manuel wasn't to destroy the cartel, but to replace them. They would shake up the landscape and create a power vacuum, let the rivals fight for power and take control of the one who wins. Yeah, Fausto and Manuel deserve to die. Their industry perpetuates and is supplied by human suffering. They killed civilians with little care and were pushing deeper into America. But the intentions of the operation were not altruistic. It was all a warning to the rivals. Don't fuck up again and we will tolerate you. This is an aspect of the movie that's relatively obvious at every level before the reveal. They torture, kill, and do hilariously illegal things. Obviously, they weren't going to play Springsteen and have a bald eagle fly down once Fausto was dead. It's even implied Alejandro was currently working with the Colombian cartel before he signed up with Matt's operation. These are unethical men doing unethical things, and their mindset's fully set on control rather than defeating the enemy. Eventually, the cartel that would replace Sonora would follow the same path, and the same thing would happen again. Hell, you could even think of it as maybe the Sonora cartel simply replaced the last guys they did this to. You also see the collateral damage that happens due to their actions. After Guillermo is taken from Mexico, the streets of Juarez become a battlefield. Kate watching from the distance as tracers fly around in this major city, a stone's throw away from America. There's also a small B-plot following a Mexican cop named Silvio. He's set up as this normal guy, a wife and a kid, just trying to make a living, and for a while you wonder what the point of showing him was. He's not a bad guy, he clearly loves his family and it's obvious he's struggling for money. Well, there you go. You have a Mexican cop with a family that needs money fast. What do you think happened? Yeah, he was in bed with the Sonora cartel, meaning he's on the radar of Matt's task force, whether he knows it or not. Silvio is taken from the tunnel by Alejandro, using him to track down Manuel, and he's killed. Shot and left for dead on the side of the highway. This small tragedy that ends up kind of closing out the movie. After Kate's forced into signing off on the paperwork saying everything about the operation was by the book and legal, we see Silvio's family. Reeling from the death of the patriarch, Silvio's wife takes their son to a soccer game, the same game he promised to take his son to before the events at the tunnel. As they play, gunfire rattles off, briefly pausing the game before a moment of silence gives them the all clear to keep playing. Hearing gunfire is now just a normal part of life. Hell, it's been a normal part of life. So, nothing changed with the death of Fausto. Silvio's character is meant to embody the futility of it all. On every level, Mexico can't really fix the cartel issue, as plenty of their law enforcement are corrupt in working with them. Hell, Kate almost got her head blown off by a federale during the border crossing.
Keep an eye out for the state police.
And the death of Fausto didn't fix anything, as Juarez is still full of cartel violence, to the point that gunfire won't even stop a children's soccer game, because the mission wasn't to help Juarez. It was to control the cartel activity to a more manageable degree. Don't make the elected men look bad. Operate in a more subtle manner in America. Mexico, go nuts, who cares? But America is sacred ground. And this leads to an interesting idea that can tie Sicario into the rest of the neo-Western trilogy. The way I see it, it's essentially a retelling of the Mexican-American War. You see, Mexico and America have had more than a few conflicts during the 1800s, the time of the cowboy. Specifically 1846, when tensions between America and Mexico exploded. The two countries had numerous disputes regarding where both countries begin and end for years leading up to the war, with Mexico invading Texas in response to the annexation of the state in 1845. This was all a result of numerous treaty disagreements and the fact that Texas technically was still considered Mexican territory even post the Texan Revolution, so America annexed a place Mexico still considered theirs. The war did not last long, from April 1846 to February 1848, a little under 2 years. And the victory was decisive, with America steamrolling down all the way to the capital, Mexico City. The war from then was able to de-escalate to further negotiations, with Mexico agreeing to grant America California, Texas, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Wyoming, all for $15 million. It doesn't sound like much, but this was 1848 money, so it was really somewhere in the ballpark of like $500 million, and still, just $500 million for a lot of different states? That's kind of a crazy deal. The two nations then went their separate ways and there was peace in the kingdom. For like 16 years until the Civil War kicked off, but that's another story for a different day. Sicario is essentially taking elements of this history and transplanting it into the modern era, saying the war on drugs is sort of a kind of new Mexican-American war. The movie opens with the cartels pushing into America, sparking off the powder keg that was building for years. The tug-of-war between law enforcement and the cartels has been around for decades, and the bombing is what kicked off full-blown military intervention. Said military intervention receives decisive victories, one after another, able to work its way until it can corner the leader of the Sonora cartel and shoot him in the head. But instead of bringing it all to the ground and destroying the networks for good, they essentially agree to a truce, leaving after all the damage is done under the promise of mutual agreement. Even the end of the film sort of mirrors the end result of the war. In America, victory was declared and everything was written off as repelling an invasion from an enemy force, neglecting to mention the repeated border disputes and technical violation of a treaty to recognize Texas as a state. Some even criticized President Polk by saying the war was unnecessary and resulted in a pointless loss of life, reflected by Alejandro forcing Kate to sign the paper while she knows the truth about what happened. the veneer of victory when nothing was really done, at least nothing that could actually be seen as altruistic. In Mexico, the damage from the war was extensive. A lot of its people ended up dead, and the prestige of the Spanish Empire was tarnished for good. Not just military personnel died either. A lot of civilians were killed in the conflict as well. And famously, the war resulted in numerous bandit gangs getting soft approval from the American government to raid Mexican territory after it officially ended, which was embodied by figures such as the Clanton Gang, the inspiration for Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. Sicario reflects this as well. We see the instability the operation causes in Mexico. A planned factor was that the violence in Juarez would get worse, intentionally putting civilians in danger in order to create an opportunity. And the ending of the movie doubles down on this, showing that the people living in Juarez are just stuck living in the aftermath, in a city that's spiraling deeper into violence. Sicario is a disturbing movie all about the deals with evil someone could be forced to make. Sure, Kate technically could have stepped away at any moment, but past certain points, it's pretty obvious that her choice isn't exactly a choice. She's stuck in this situation, watching everything around her getting more shady and hard to justify until it becomes just too much. Now, some people downright hate Emily Blunt's character, seeing her as preachy and an annoying addition basically there to be the voice of reason. And yeah, they're not fully wrong. She's literally meant to be the humanity to the story that's horrified as she's surrounded by inhuman men. But that's an aspect the movie itself comments on. It's fun to watch the action scenes, to see Alejandro shoot his way through Fausto's compound. But really think about that. When you know the full context of the story and what the entire plan was from the beginning, yeah, these guys weren't superheroes trying to liberate a nation from this crippling problem. They just wanted the problem to go away from their backyard. Or in Alejandro's case, he just really wanted this guy who screwed him over dead. They weren't wrong to fight the cartel, but they make it clear they aren't actually really fighting them, just reminding them who's really in charge. So Kate being so confrontational and done with this shady lifestyle makes sense. They don't respect her, treating her like a puppy they have to bring along instead of a colleague.
I told you you'd be useful.
And granted, if we're being real here, Matt totally would have found a yes man who is the less likely to ask questions and just shut up when he's talking. But hey, the story needs conflict, so they get Kate. Plus, she gets screwed over in the end, living a life of constant paranoia and the fear of being taken out once they decide she's too much of a loose end. Whether that's the cartels or the CIA, she pays for her choice. Hard. Sicario really is a great film, a good exploration of human evil and the shit we're capable of doing to each other, and it's a good lesson on what it takes to win a war, and how that might not be what the guys in charge have in mind. It's an awesome one-and-done film, just 2 hours of this grim story that stays with you long after you see it. Now, I mentioned before, this actually got a sequel, Sicario, Day of the Soldado. This came out in 2018, 3 years after the original. It follows Josh Brolin and Alejandro's characters, once again pulled into the fight against the cartels. Kate is long gone and not even really mentioned, pretty much going with the idea that she rode off into the sunset, no doubt doomed to a life of guilt and paranoia. Instead, it's fully about Matt and Alejandro. It's actually a pretty ballsy choice, essentially dedicating a sequel to the bad guys of the original, fleshing them out more and showing that they have their own perspective on the matter. I'm not against the idea, and Day of the Soldado isn't a complete waste of a sequel. There is a lot to like here. The story takes place sometime after the original. Matt is called in to once again take on the cartels after it's revealed that terrorist organizations are smuggling themselves into America by paying them off. He recruits Alejandro once again, who's always ready to fuck up the narcos, and the two work on destabilizing the region once again, trying to incite a war between rival families for mutual destruction. Now, the actual plot Day of the Soldado is interesting. Seeing this Machiavellian attempt to play the cartels against each other with false flags and assassinations is fun. The problem is Sicario 2 just isn't as refined as the original. It can be sloppy more than once, even falling into cliches that the original avoided for the most part. Like Alejandro mentioning to Kate in the original, she reminds him of his daughter, is meant to show how far he's fallen. He clearly likes her, basically the only one on the team with any form of respect to Kate, yet he didn't hesitate to shoot her once it came down to it, because what's left of the man is gone, replaced by this monster that's wearing his skin, even threatening to kill her and make it look like a suicide if she didn't sign the paper.
You would be committing suicide, Kate.
Well, the sequel has a cartel leader's teenage daughter be kidnapped, and Alejandro has his loyalty shaken, since he wants to protect her. Now, it doesn't go full cliche with it, where he betrays Matt, but it gets pretty close, since now that little detail of the original is blown up into a literal plot point. He has a surrogate daughter he wants to save. You also have the scene where Alejandro assassinates the lawyer to the rival family in a false flag in broad daylight. Now granted, that was literally the idea. It needed to be a very loud public attack. The problem is, he takes his mask off. Another case of kind of tossing out the realism for the sake of a cool scene, because Because if the guy's meant to infiltrate and make it look like the rival family did it, the dude 100% would have killed him with the mask on, since they don't want it known an outsider killed him. The rival cartel family could have easily said, hey, that guy doesn't work for us, he works for the Colombians and the Americans. But it never happens because the plot said so. As stated, not the worst plot hole, but compared to the original, it's pretty egregious. Now, I think the reason the film can feel sloppy is because Sicario isn't really the kind of movie that ever intended on having a sequel. To its credit, it doesn't become a complete farce. There's still talent here. Taylor Sheridan came back to write the script, so the characters still feel authentic to who they were, and it's unafraid to keep it clear these aren't really good men. And the director, Stefano Sollima, is actually capable of doing some damn fine crime thrillers himself. He produced and directed episodes of the show Gomorrah, a really good show that explores the Italian side of the mafia, also being the creator of the miniseries 000, which feels more like the sequel to Sicario than the actual sequel, being this globe-spanning story about all these different criminal organizations affected by a robbery of a ship containing millions of dollars worth of cocaine. He's got the chops to do a crime thriller, which a sequel to Sicario definitely fits in that wheelhouse. But I think it comes down to his style contrasting with Denis. The original film can feel like a horror movie at times, very intense yet quiet sequences that build tension for entire minutes. Day of the Soldado is more explosive, being more willing to get to the action and can leave the smaller details to the wayside. It's a sequel that can be frustrating to fans of the original. It's perfectly watchable, there's more than a few scenes I really like, but in the end it falls into the territory of the sequel you probably forgot existed. It's nowhere near the level of bad sequel that something like Pacific Rim Uprising or Joker 2 got. Dear God, not that bad. But it just doesn't do enough to stick out from the pack. It can feel generic, which is shocking for something that was able to take the cartel crime genre and do something so fresh with it. There's talks there's going to be a third one, Sicario Capos, but it's been hush-hush for years, probably due to the not amazing reception Day of the Soldado got. Neither film flopped, they made their money back, but these are clearly meant more as prestige films, the kind of movie a studio approves to get awards and earn some respect rather than just an attempt at a paycheck. So having the sequel be considered okay stings worse than if it just flopped. Maybe the third one can come out and be great just like the original, but that's speculation since we don't know if it's even going to be a thing. Day of the Soldado definitely shouldn't be enough to kill the whole trilogy. It wasn't a bad film by any means, I do actually recommend it. It's just not as good as the original, which is common enough for huge franchises, so it can feel a tad unfair. Who knows, maybe a third movie can cap off this trilogy and we can have a pretty damn solid trio of movies that explore the cartel issue. Hell, if you want, you can make a fan trilogy where you throw in No Country for Old Men acting as a sort of prequel, showing the rise of cartel violence, the growing inadequacy of the police, and Sicario 1 and 2 as next chapters as the war grows more nasty. I mean, I don't know, maybe it could work. Still, I'll always love the original movie. It's just a solid thriller. One you should really check out if you have any interest in the subject matter. You won't regret it. It might end up becoming one of your favorite movies. It certainly happened to me, and maybe it can happen to you guys too. But do you know what else can happen? Gamer subs, use code TAL at checkout. Use the code. Use the code. The cartel's banging down my door. They demand their cut of the Gamer subs bunny. Use the code. Use the code. Use the code or you meet God at dinner. Use the code. Until next time, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. See you guys. Hey loser, do you want a shirt? Do you want a t-shirt? I have shirts now. Look in the description for a link to a t-shirt you can buy. If you don't buy the t-shirt, I'll kill your family. If you don't buy the t-shirt, I'll poison your dog. If you don't buy the t-shirt, you're going to be the only person in town that does not have a t-shirt. Everyone's going to look at you funny. There's going to be social consequences to not having one of these t-shirts. I am now making express threats of violence against you if you do not buy my t-shirt. I will call the police, tell them how you're not buying my shirt. They're going to plant crack in your house, and they're going to arrest you and then beat you up in a jail cell. Buy my shirt.
A falta del padre del padrino, ¿verdad? No acabalaron a Gilberto, pues salió el pávido návido, hombre. Ahorita le canto mi gusto de eso. Te ando siguiendo los pasos, aunque me niegues tu amor. Ira, no soy desgraciado, soy nacido de una flor, soy nacido de una flor. A un marinero en el golfo la vela se le apagó. Este año me vuelvo loco si tú me dices que no, si tú me dices que no. ¡Vámonos, oiga! Y arriba mi Sinaloa. Quisiera estarte mirando los 31 días del mes. 7 días por la semana y un besito en cada vez, un besito en cada vez.